You're listening to Sick Sad Lit, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the weird, the wounded, and the wildly good. I'm your host, Jen Eastwood, and today's episode is a visceral, razor-sharp conversation with a writer whose debut has haunted me in all the best ways. Emma Van Straaten joins me to talk about her astonishing first novel, This Immaculate Body, or Creep if you're tuning in from the US, a book that unflinchingly explores identity, obsession, and the echoes of trauma through a protagonist you definitely will not forget. We talk about the origins of Alice, Emma's complex, deeply human narrator, and how personal experience, family dynamics, and motherhood shaped the writing of this novel. In this episode, we get into the gritty details, how daily routine affects creativity, the balancing act of writing while mothering, and the catharsis that comes from channeling rage, fear, and vulnerability into fiction. It's a raw, generous, and deeply thoughtful conversation with a writer whose voice is already reshaping the landscape of contemporary fiction. So grab your tea or your wine, whatever you drink, and let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me, Emma. Would you mind introducing yourself and just telling our listeners a little bit about your work and your writing?
Yes, hello, it's lovely to be here. I'm Emma. I live in London with my two small children and my husband, and This Immaculate Body, as it's known in the UK, or Creep, as it's known in the US, and I guess New Zealand and Australia, is my first novel that came out in February, and it's kind of been a labour of love over the past kind of 5 years, in which I also had those two children. It has been a wild ride of a journey so far, and very exciting. And I'm now working on my second book.
That's so exciting. How does it feel having it out there in the world now?
It's getting easier and easier. It was, honestly, my main fear was kind of my parents-in-law reading it, weirdly. Like my husband's dad is a vicar, and so it's quite a overt, excessive, kind of disgusting sort of book with like elements of it that are quite personal. And so it's kind of less weird at being out in the world and kind of random people reading it, and more weird when my kind of close, immediate family and friends are kind of who know me have read it as well. So it's been it feels exposing, but it's basically been getting easier and easier.
Have you had any uncomfortable conversations with them?
No, not really. The people who I think have been made uncomfortable by it have tended to give the most kind of gently neutral to positive kind of, oh, it's very well written kind of responses. They don't really like delve into the issue. Exactly. So no, everyone spared me the deeply awkward conversations, although it has been nice kind of talking to my sister about some of the elements I raise about kind of growing up mixed race in like a white community.
I read your essay that you published about your experience growing up mixed race as well, and how that sort of fed into the novel. And I don't know if like excited is the right word to say, but like I felt so seen. I'm also mixed race and also white passing, as you can tell. And there's just not that much conversation about the mixed race experience. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the origin for This Immaculate Body and how you navigated those key themes?
Well, This Immaculate Body started from when I was a cleaner in my early 20s. That kind of like the core of it started then, when I was a law school student cleaning for a couple who lived in the same block of flats as me. And when they hired me, I met the woman of the couple once when she kind of just checked each other with a normal person. And then I never met her husband, but I cleaned their stuff every week for about 6 months. It was the most bizarre experience, kind of being, as I was, a kind of privileged tourist, I guess, in that industry. It was just kind of extra cash. I didn't need to do it, really. So I kind of had almost license for it to feel a bit fun. And so although I truly do believe I did a good job of cleaning, and I didn't kind of mean to, but I did just find myself absorbing stuff and beginning to feel like I knew them. And so that was kind of the core of This Immaculate Body, in that this kind of the idea that you can feel like you know someone from their belongings. And then I kind of wondered what would it be like if that kind of a different side of person had this insight into you. Could it become love? Could it become obsession? Could it be dangerous? All that kind of stuff. That's kind of where the kind of the basis of Alice being a cleaner for a person came. And then the broader kind of issues that came into it just sort of happened organically. Like I launched myself into it. This is like back in 2018 or something, with no plan. I'd honestly start chapters being like, I wonder where this is going. And like, just a word of advice, this is a horrible way to write a novel, I've discovered. And I'm doing like exactly the opposite for my second one. But at the time, you know, in your first novel, you have no deadline, you have no plan really. You're just kind of like, I'm going to write because I want to write it. And, you know, who knows where it will end up. So a lot of the kind of issues that arise, so talking about the mixed race identity to some extent and body image and shame and all that stuff, just kind of seeped their way into the words without me meaning them to. And I feel like the work basically became more and more personal. Like it started off as this kind of fun little, or what if this deluded, unhinged girly like gets the wrong end of the stick pretty much as badly as you can. And then it became, what if I write about this thing that I've been thinking about or has affected me or whatever. So yeah.
I find that so fascinating how those sorts of themes and experiences just sort of organically filter through and come through. Did you find it almost, I know you sort of spoke about having to cull certain parts of the book because they were too critical, like Alice came across as too critical of herself, which you said was quite confronting because all of that was things you'd said to yourself throughout the course of your life. Did you find the process cathartic in a way of like having a creative medium to, I guess, work through these sorts of themes?
I think the true catharsis did actually come from, I guess, almost having someone out, like my editor, basically pointing out to me that this is kind of too much, and then kind of going through the motions of deleting everything. So that was kind of like quite like a neat way of it all kind of being shown to me, really. Like I kind of could see it happening, like on the screen. I could see the words like vanishing. But the actual writing of it did feel, I think cathartic's not quite the word at this point. It was just kind of more like interesting. I just kind of think I wonder what this will unlock or where this is going, and then I, you know, decide to put something in about, you know, a memory would pop. Let's say the scene in which she talks about the internship she did, where one of the people asked for a cup of tea the colour of her skin, basically. That did happen to me when I was 18, and at the time I kind of like didn't appreciate.
Shocking.
At the time I didn't appreciate how insane that was. And so I guess it's kind of been, useful as kind of a tool for looking at my own experiences as well. So I don't know. It's weird because I kind of wrote it in the first place, but I feel like it's also been instructing me and informing me how to look at things that have happened to me as well.
When I read that actually happened, the tea scene, my jaw dropped. I gasped out loud. I could not believe that actually, I mean, I can believe that actually happened. That's sad, but jeez. Thinking about Alice and Alice's tone of voice, how did Alice come to take shape in your mind? So from the initial idea based on your experience working part-time as a cleaner, how did Alice start to become more and more real in your mind?
The novel kind of started as a short story, an 1,000-word short story, and that was pure voice. It just is incredibly easy and kind of magical to slip into this like acidic, like vitriol. It came weirdly easily for me to just like sustain writing in that kind of very misanthropic way. And so kind of Alice started off as a voice, and just her warped like worldview is kind of encapsulated in that. But she became more of a kind of a fleshed out kind of person as I sort of wanted to explore I kind of don't want to give any spoilers, but like the natural kind of climax of the piece. I kind of knew where it had to end, and I wanted to understand what type of person would have to create that ending, really. She started off kind of the most horrible person of all time, and essentially every kind of moulding and shaping I did of her, to me, like humanized her more. And that was also something that my agent editor kind of said. These are like, we love an unlikable character, but you can't make her too monstrous. And so basically the entire nursing home subplot was a later addition to kind of show her that she is she can be human. She can have like relatively like normal relationships with people who she doesn't feel are judging her, which is kind of her main issue.
I loved the parts with her sister, also not giving away any spoilers, but the way that her sister really sees her and, wow, to a certain point, really sees her and loves all these parts of her that she otherwise hates about herself. I thought that was a really nice, I guess, mirror for Alice. It was nice to see that there are people and characters that do care about Alice throughout the book as well.
And leading on from that sort of is, and kind of going back to your original question, the other thing was like the physicality of Alice that I took as like a challenge, in that I kind of wanted it to be just incredibly vague what she looked like. You kind of get snatches of how she views herself, and again, I hope snatches of how other people see her physically. And the idea that you kind of have no idea how much she weighs, or you know whether she's like conventionally attractive or not. Really, you just don't really ever, or even what ethnicity she is. Because she's so relentlessly unpleasant about herself and so keen to disregard what other people say. But kind of it was quite a fun challenge as a writer to try and like put in little snippets of how other people viewed her to be seen through Alice's eyes, because they're so like in her head all the time, and have her kind of ignore, dismiss, or like not even notice what they say.
What kind of work or research did you have to do to turn Alice into kind of a genuinely insane person?
I did absolutely no research at all. I just tapped into it, I guess. I don't know how alarming that is, but I basically was just like, okay, she's obsessed, but what if she's like more obsessed? I just found it weirdly easy. People have asked me this, you know, how did you kind of manage to imagine the mind of this kind of genuinely unwell woman? And I'm just like, oh, it honestly wasn't that hard. I just really wanted to just make sure her delusion was complete in every way, really, and everything I wrote was kind of around that brief. I was just like, she just simply believes that she and Tom are connected by their hearts, and like everything kind of flowed from that.
She was very believable, extremely believable. It really reminded me of back in primary school or like intermediate school, when you would have these delusional crushes on like the older kids. I remember thinking like that, like building these stories about, did they look at me this way, or like, and they must have styled their hair like that for me. Like, I don't know, reading into these things like deeply. She reminded me almost of that childhood naivete as well as absolute delusion.
No, that's completely right. And that's something I kind of consciously tried to do, is to kind of stagnate her, or to like kind of preserve her in amber around 16. And so because she is this kind of naive, kind of not very worldly or experienced person who kind of underwent this traumatic thing at school that happened to her, and she kind of withdraws from the world at that point. And I wanted to make it so that she doesn't really develop much beyond that. Like all of her, that's why people have said, like, why Tom? Like, he's honestly so boring. And I'm like, exactly. He's like every 16-year-old, like, kind of vision of what a man is. All her ideas of romance are just so, like, kind of like PG and tame. And she just wants to, like, hold his hand and, like, be in love. And so that's all very kind of juvenile to me, as you mentioned, the kind of fantasy, the idea of, like, lying in bed thinking about completely, like, tame, sweet little stories that you kind of play and replay and kind of tweak the details, and like it's a genuine like, activity that like young women like do when they're children. And so the other way I tried to kind of show this stagnation was all of the literary references that I put in the book. She feels like she's very erudite, she feels like she's very learned and bookish and kind of escaped the world using books, but basically all of the books that she mentions are just like GCSE A-level syllabus in the UK. So it's just kind of school books, really. Like that's where her mind has stayed to all intents and purposes. That's what her understanding of love and romance and relationships is from. And so yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, because I did try to like preserve this kind of juvenile attitude in her, because she just kind of arrested development at this point of trauma.
I think too, it's also very believable that if you had experienced the trauma that she had or the bullying that she had as a child with this real lack of belonging or this searching to belong, it's completely believable that if you were isolated enough or you isolated yourself, you could basically preserve your maturity levels in that time. It's almost an interesting cautionary tale of what can happen if you don't go to therapy.
Yeah, she should have just talked to someone, didn't she?
Yeah. It seems like Alice feels like if Tom loved her back, if only she could be loved or like look after or nurture him. And even within the care home, looking after and nurturing these others who are reliant on her, that then she will finally become worthy. Was that something that was intentional when you first started out writing it, or was it kind of a theme that naturally or organically came through as you went through the process?
It kind of grew because I kind of started the book just with this idea of her kind of mania, her kind of obsession with this one guy. It was kind of like almost a writing exercise at the beginning, out to cite how single-minded can I make her, how kind of oppressive and kind of over the top can I make the writing, how suffocating can I make this atmosphere. And kind of Tom didn't matter to me really, and almost her role once she kind of got Tom didn't matter either. Like, it was just the pursuit. And then it was pointed out to me by many people that I was no, like, she needs to, like, there needs to be something more to it. And so then I kind of reflected on what she feels that she would gain from that. And yeah, it's just kind of weird. I want to be the kind of the center of the family, like the mother, the wife, but also I want him to protect me. It's basically how the woman, the kind of trad wife, almost like a trad wife,
yeah,
like the perfect woman, which is like the combination of essentially like the Virgin Mary and, you know, Nigella Lawson or something, to someone very nurturing but also very small. So I think she just, again, perhaps it's like the 16-year-old in her, pursuing that's a happy woman, basically, a woman who everyone looks to for comfort and is still protected by her husband.
It is so interesting, like her glamorization or glorification of the nuclear family. As I was reading it, I was thinking, well, she didn't have that growing up, and she maybe feels like if she had, then things might have been different. The mixed race theme coming through quite strongly for Alice towards the end. One thing that struck me was she never really fully reconciled that part of her, I guess. She kind of did, but not completely. And I'm curious, was that important for her journey to remain unresolved, or what did you want to leave the reader with?
I don't think I was kind of strictly intentional in that. I knew that there could never be a resolution to this particular aspect given the other things happening in the novel at the end. Like, that's kind of like the primary concern. So many people have asked me kind of like, what happens to her? Is she okay? And again, like, without giving too many spoilers, I feel like she's not the person we started with, kind of thing. Like, she does undergo, although it may not seem that dramatic, she undergoes some change throughout the novel, and her sister kind of does become more of a figure. Alice's relationship with her mixed race identity, she kind of uses it as a party piece almost. She kind of, you know, rolls her eyes or is annoyed or angry at any kind of casual racism coming her way, but she invites it by basically pretending she's a different ethnicity every time someone asks her about it. And, you know, she's got all these pocket dictionaries that basically give her like snippets of various languages that she can confound people with. I think there is scope for it to develop beyond it being a party piece to her. Like, her relationship, I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler, but her relationship with her sister does become better. And I think, so my sister and I have a really, I found it very interesting talking to her about our different experiences. And I think it has brought us closer and also helped, because as children, we didn't really discuss it with each other at all. It's only now as adults that we've talked about our different experiences growing up as mixed race. And so I'm hoping a similar thing for Alice is possible, but just it's not within the remit of the book. And I guess because of the kind of unformed ending that I wanted to give the novel, I felt like I couldn't really wrap that aspect up because it didn't feel like the place for it.
Did your sister read? I mean, obviously she must have read the book, but what were her thoughts on it? Did she give you some of the "it's nicely well written" kind of feedback, or was she a little bit more specific?
No, she was honestly so effusive, and I think it might have verbalized some of her thoughts on her own sort of growing up journey. But no, it led to some nice conversations between us, and she's just very supportive, and I think she did say it's very well written, FYI. But,
as well.
Yeah, no, I think she, we were brought up in the same circumstances, so I think this kind of maybe resonates with her more than it could with anyone, because the bits of my soul that I've poured in there, she can recognize.
Do you see yourself continuing to explore those sorts of themes in future work?
Not consciously. I think kind of stuff will probably find its way in somehow, but I'm hoping this will be kind of a lifelong career. Not career, because obviously I can't earn any money from it, really. It'll be alongside a job. The second book I'm working on at the moment, it's partially set in the 14th century, so it's completely different direction, but there are elements in it that I don't know if I've got this compulsion to kind of not overshare, but to work through my own thoughts and feelings on things through the medium of writing. But I'm hearing impaired and have been since being a baby, and I have always been embarrassed, shy, kind of hidden it from people, and it's only genuinely in the last few years that I'm less squeamish about it. So this is something I was thinking of maybe exploring in this second novel. So again, it's so weird that I think I'm just very confessional as a person, and that I feel my first novel is deeply about kind of body shame, body image, growing up mixed race, again very personal things to me, body hair, all that kind of stuff. And then this one is going to potentially be looking into having a hearing impairment, what's that like. So yeah, so basically my answer to your question a very long time ago is no. The second one isn't necessarily about mixed race identity. I do not think I will never write about it again, because as I said, I would like to write a third book, a fourth book, even if the ideas haven't kind of fully formed. But I am possibly, but only if it kind of makes sense to the novel, going to explore other aspects of my life.
I think as writers, it makes so much sense to explore topics that you have lived experience with, right? It's that is your experience of the world, and it's an interesting take, it's an interesting perspective. And what could you possibly write more emotively about than something you actually understand the pain of, I guess, or the nuance of different things. Congratulations also on now writing full time. What's your day look like now?
Oh my goodness, it's amazing. So this is week 3. This is and the last 2 weeks were only 4-day weeks because of the Easter weekend, and obviously having children means that any weekends are not weekends. But it's honestly been absolutely glorious. To be honest, it still feels like I'm on holiday a bit, and so I've been maybe going for a little coffee and a treat every day.
Gotta fuel the brain. Gotta fuel the creativity.
No, exactly. But honestly, my dream writing setup is kind of wake up, get going immediately. I write all morning, have a break for lunch, and then the afternoon is kind of more research. Although I don't know why I've set this book in the 14th century, because I literally don't know anything about the 14th century. So I am having to do a lot of reading, and I'm just really, really enjoying it. It feels like such an insane privilege. And because money, I'm doing this for a calendar year only. And so I have a kind of delightfully self-imposed deadline of just basically finishing this book, but we'll see how it goes.
It's so exciting. I mean, I feel bad because I'm clearly mucking up your schedule right now, because this is
no, you're good.
Writing time, especially with the kids just having been dropped off. Your approach to drafting this time is very different. So you mentioned last time you were very much a pantser, as they say, and now you've adapted your approach a little bit. So what is your approach to drafting this one like this time, including, especially considered considering there's a bit of research involved now.
Basically, to avoid doing the pantsing of the previous one, and because I thought I would be going back to work 4 days a week with one writing day, I basically thought every single Monday, which was my old writing day, I would have to know exactly what I was going to write before I wrote it. Otherwise, it would take me 10 years to write anything. So I spent weeks basically plotting, which I've never done before. I don't really know what I'm doing, and tried to work out basically what's going to happen in every single chapter. So it's kind of half in 14th century, half in contemporary Oxford at the moment. I mean, obviously all subject to change. So I basically was like, I need to make use of these Mondays really efficiently. I need to write very, very efficiently. But now, like, it's all changed. I've got all the time in the world, but I also have already plotted it. So I'm in an amazing situation where I've got loads and loads of time, and also I've basically plotted the whole thing already. And so I feel I'm kind of researching as I go along, because I did start trying to like learn all about the 14th century, which was obviously impossible because it's
rather a big subject.
It's rather a big subject, exactly. So that's kind of how it's going. So I actually, for once, know I kind of stopped as soon as I knew that I was stopping my kind of old day job. I actually stopped plotting completely to give myself some element of flexibility. But I basically got the broad arc that everything needs to fall under, but now the time and the flexibility. I'm basically living my dream. Like, I can't believe it. If you told me, like, 5 years ago that I would just have all the time in the world / 1 calendar year to write a book, I'd be so happy. So I'm just really don't want to like miss this opportunity. So I'm trying not to piss about. Basically, I need to get to it.
That's amazing. Are you finding that the words are flowing fine? Are you creatively like as inspired, or is your brain fighting you on like, no, this is not how we normally work?
No, it's good. It's really good. It's comforting knowing that what I'm doing, and it also has the benefit is that if I'm not like vibing with a particular part, I can just be like, well, I know I'm going to be writing this section later. I can just kind of have a crack at that instead. So it's actually, I think, making me more annoyingly, because obviously, like, it's not a very romantic way to look at writing, is to be very kind of organized, which is what I'm not very as a person. But yeah, it's working for me. It's working for me so far. I'm on week 3. We'll see if I get kind of frustrated by the constraints of it all, but I'm sure it will be tough, because writing is tough, but it's exactly what I want to be doing.
When you wrote this Immaculate Body, how did you approach that? Did you sort of sit down to write every day, or did you pick it up when it felt right? How did you approach the drafting and then the revision process for this Immaculate Body?
Yeah, it's something I'd always wanted to do. Like, I when I was a child, I wrote a lot, and then there was a massive gap in my teens where I didn't really write much at all beyond fan fiction.
I think we all got our starts on fan fiction.
And then I was just like, I just want to finish something. I kind of started all these terrible novels in my when I was like 18 or whatever, and then I was like, I just want to finish. I want to like complete something. So that was always my aim. Like, it sounds like I'm being like coy, but it truly wasn't ever like publication. That just felt like within. I couldn't even comprehend that. It was just like, I just want to finish this complete story to prove that I can do it. And so I wrote kind of when I could, really. I did a lot of writing on the bus on my phone, and this was like on my commute. This is when I worked full time still. And then I can't remember at what point I went down to 4 days a week. Oh, it was after I won the Women's Prize Discoveries Award and was given an agent, basically. And so it was kind of like, I need to invest time into this, otherwise, because I'd had a baby by this point, otherwise I simply will not have the time to do it. So I guess before having children, when I had the full-time job, it was just like the classic evenings and weekends, and I used to get to work quite early and just start working at the work computer, just because I just felt compelled to finish it. And then COVID happened, obviously, which was obviously horrifying, but great in terms of my commute was replaced by like pure laptop time. And so that's actually when I got most of it done, when I had those extra like 2 hours of the day, because it was consistency that mattered. It was the daily writing, because when I came back to work after my second maternity leave this January, and when I came to the realization that I simply wouldn't be able to write a novel this way, I'd have every Monday, I'd write on the Monday, and then the next Monday I wouldn't have thought about the book in between, and I'd be like, sorry, what am I doing? Like, what did I write? Spend, you know, an hour reading what I'd written the last time, try and find my place again and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just impossible. So I know there are writers who work full time, and with children, like I literally don't understand how anyone does that.
I just quit my job, and I was working in advertising, and I finished up a couple of weeks ago. And
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm so happy. So happy to be not in that industry anymore. But I've started a new job, and it's amazing, and it's working for my friend in her small business, and it's fully remote. So like this is my workplace right here. And I have all these had all these dreams and ideas about what my ideal morning routine was going to be like. And I was like, I'm going to go to yoga at 6:30, and then I'm going to write at the cafe next door for an hour, and then I'm going to start work. And honestly, I have like slept until like 8:45 every day, and then I just shuffle to the office in my pajamas. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm squandering this opportunity. So yeah, I'm like, you've got kids and you do it, and people have jobs and kids and they do it. I'm like, this is, good for you.
What's your dream writing scenario? How do you work?
I'm better in the evenings. Like I'm much more creative in the afternoons than in the evenings. Like, even when I was working, I had a creative job in advertising, and I preferred to take all my meetings in the morning, like front load my morning with meetings, because I prefer the afternoons to do my deep work, my uninterrupted deep work. And so I don't know why I continue to fight the fact that I'm not creative in the morning. Like I think because everybody else is, or like people always talk about creativity happening in the morning, but that's just not who I am. Like, I prefer to write in the afternoons and in the evenings, and I should just do that. Also, I don't know what my excuse is. I gave up television this year. I haven't turned my TV on all year, and that was with a view to actually writing. But
are we talking like live TV, or you still watch Netflix and stuff, right?
No,
all gone. Oh my God.
All gone. Yeah. That's been liberating.
I bet it has been, to be honest.
It's been great.
Oh, I'm so impressed. I don't know if I could do it. Like, Married at First Sight Australia is my absolute favourite at the moment. It's so good.
That was the other thing. Like, while I was on holiday, I think over summer here in New Zealand, in December, January, I read a lot of books, but I read Demon Copperhead, which I don't know if you've read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I don't just read crazy shit. I also do read some other stuff. And so this is one of those ones that I read. And oh my God, it was so good. I mean, like, it's huge. It's like a door stopper. And it was so immersive. And like, I'm like, TV could never be this good. Like, it just could never be this good. There's nothing that they could put in front of me that could possibly match what's happening in my brain right now as I'm reading this. So that was kind of like the clincher. Which artists, like musicians, writers, filmmakers, who inspires you? What do you turn to for inspiration and creativity?
I always think of Ottessa Moshfegh as a kind of source of creativity. She's such a interesting person, and I love her writing, but I think we're both Substack subscribers, and she's so nice, like, weirdly as well, and just like supportive, and she's like, sometimes I feel like I'm faking it a bit. I'm not like really a writer. I've just kind of written a book, but like I don't have it like in my soul or my core. Like, it's not like, I mean, I guess it kind of is why I breathe, but it's like, for her, it really is like who she is. Like, she has been a writer her whole life, and so I find that very inspiring, that she's always been like moved to create using like words, really. And I love her books, and Eileen is kind of the first book I read, really, that made me realise that female protagonists can be dirty and weird and gross and unpleasant. And I feel like that kind of where like the germ of Alice started, really, in like realising that that's allowed. But otherwise, I don't know. I should have like prepared this question with like some cool responses. But honestly, like, going for walks is like one of my primary methods of getting my thoughts in order. And actually, something I did yesterday is I met up with a friend who's a writer, and we deliberately, I don't know how well you know London, but we walked from like London Bridge all the way along the river to Vauxhall, and I'd like racked up genuinely like 20,000 steps doing this. But we met with the sole purpose of walking and to both talk through like plot points and plot holes of each other, and that I find is the most inspiring thing to do, is to talk to someone about their book and then your book. And I don't know, the walking kind of like helps somehow, and that you're kind of not really looking at each other, and it just kind of all feeds into this like very useful process. And my husband, and I used to make my husband go on walks with me during COVID, and that's where lots of the plotting, such as it was, happened for the first book. And so, yeah, I think the process of walking, ideally with someone who is like willing to listen to you talk at them indefinitely, is a very useful way of kind of unlocking creativity. But for this next book, like I watched The Green Knight again recently with Dev Patel, and that I think I'm going to draw on a lot for this second book, just because of its atmosphere is so incredible that I just want that to kind of feed into what I end up doing.
This is a weird question, but what did you study at university?
English literature for my BA, and then I did an MA in Romantic and Victorian literature.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I really loved it. And then like I stupidly decided I should be a lawyer, so I went to law school.
It's quite a pivot.
I know. Well, it's one of those things where I was just like, oh, shall I go into publishing, or shall I go into law? Like I need a career. I love books, that kind of thing. But like honestly, I think I sent off like 50 applications for publishing and like did not even get a response to anyone. I mean, I'm sure they're like completely inundated. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll go for law then. Bad decision.
Far out. It's such a could not be.
I know.
More opposite on the
it was a horrible decision.
What was it like getting an agent and an editor for the first time? Did you gel with your editor well? Like, do you think your editor really got you?
Yeah, I was really lucky that my book had there was a 4-way auction for it, and so I met 4 different editors, and so basically was able to choose the person I vibed with the best, and she was amazing. Yeah, it really kind of worked out. Although having said that, I think like there was no kind of editor that I was like, oh God, I'd never work with you kind of thing. Like everyone was absolutely delightful. But yeah, I remember I'd been potty training my oldest child the weekend that all the kind of the Zoom calls were flying. Like the auction was quite like exciting and stressful. Like it was all happening at the same time, and then you meet everyone on Zoom, and then you have to like decide who to go with.
Such a big decision.
Yeah, it was all happening over like the week we decided to potty train my child, and it was honestly, I remember like sprinting up the stairs because our kind of the setup was in the loft at the time, and we'd be in the sitting room with Coco, my 3-year-old, and she was literally just like not really having it, and I'd be like rinsing my hands of like urine and then like running up the stairs to make my like appointment with this editor. And I remember Rhiannon, who's the editor at Fleet, is who I went with. She had like a similar age child, and she was like, I get it. And I was like, oh, I think we understand each other. Yeah.
I think that's so funny, and also you're so real for that. Like that is just life, right?
Yeah, yes it is.
Do you think you'll ever write a book about motherhood?
Cliched, but yes, I think that's my 3rd book.
I'm child free by choice, but I read All Fours by Miranda July earlier in the year, and I was just fascinated by this question of identity after motherhood, and reading different fiction takes on that.
Yeah, although I don't know what, I kind of launched quite confidently in saying it'll be my 3rd book, but there's obviously like been so many amazing books written recently about and that the tide has kind of changed, like the kind of the difficulties of motherhood, like this shift of identity, like loss of identity, like Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I know, so good.
Stunning.
And Soldier Sailor, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize last year, I think. Yeah. And so only if I feel like I have anything to add to the canon, like I might add.
You definitely do. I think you definitely do. I think every single person's experience is different, right? And they're all valid.
Yeah, we'll see. Come back in 5 years and see where we are.
Are you reading anything at the moment? Are you the type of writer who doesn't really read while you're working on something, or do you like to have books on the side on the go at the same time?
With my first book, I basically went through a panic and avoided reading anything that was remotely similar to mine. I remember having various stresses that I'd see. One funny thing, when I was writing it, I don't know if you know The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. It's like
I haven't read it, but I know it.
It's like a delightful romantic comedy about two people who share a flat, but he works nights and she works days, so like they share the same bed but are never in the flat at the same time, kind of thing. Anyway, I saw like a really tiny write-up about it in a magazine, and it was like they fall in love like through the flat belongings, and I was just like, oh my god, to my husband, like someone's written this book, the book I'm writing already, and then he was like, I think this is like a romantic comedy, and like obviously yours is not. And then when I read it later, I was just like, oh, they literally could not be further from the truth. Like, it's literally a romantic book. And I same reason I avoided reading I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, because I saw it in a shop, and I was just like, oh my god, it sounds the same as mine. Like, oh, like what am I going to do? Like, no one's going to want to read my book, etc. Like, cue spiral. And then when I read it, I was like, it's amazing. And yeah, there are like similarities, I guess, of theme, but they're both still very different books. So yeah, generally I try to avoid them, but will read other stuff. And at the moment, because there's not really that much that kind of covers the stuff that I'm doing in my second book, I'm kind of quite chill about what I'm reading. But one of the fun things about being an author now is that you get sent so many advanced reading copies, and so I've basically been working my way through a bunch of those for blurbing, and honestly there's so much good stuff coming out. I am very excited for everyone to read the things I've been reading.
I agree. I feel like especially women's fiction at the moment, and I don't mean women's fiction as the category, I mean fiction written by women or queer people, is like so good at the moment. And I kind of don't read anything written by a man generally if I can avoid it. I'm like, they've had their time, like they've had their space. It's like I've heard enough. I don't need any more. So I kind of prefer to read books not written by men, and it's not even hard because the work coming out right now is so good and so interesting and original. And maybe it is that thing of increasingly we've got permission to have characters be gross and unlikable and very human, and I guess challenging to society's expectations of them. Maybe that's why things are more interesting now. On that note, what are your thoughts on the increase in dark fiction, weird literature, good for her lit, as I refer to it sometimes? My view on it is like, I find catharsis in it, and I'm almost get to live vicariously through these characters who do insane shit that I would never do, but only because it's not appropriate or whatever. What are your views on it? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think it's problematic?
I don't know. I don't really know if I have an opinion about it. What I find so interesting is that because of like such the long lead time behind books, that I think so many of the books, like the Unhinged, Good for Her kind of books that have come out in the last year or two were beginning to have been written like up to as many as 5 years ago. And so when Weird Girl Lit like wasn't really a thing. And so like something, there must be like a sense or something happening to like all of us that meant us.
That's true.
That meant we all kind of agreed that this was something that we should write about. And so I do think it's positive in that it's clearly expressing something that many women from many countries have all sort of decided to do at the same time. And like now, like there will be books written because the genre exists, if that makes sense. But I think it's a positive thing. I think women have chosen to write this for a reason. I think it is a reaction to like the constraints of society, like the patriarchy, especially like the dark shit happening in America, and like lack of female bodily autonomy and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, yeah, if I mean, it's depressing that, you know, it has to be explored in literature if that's the only way it can be expressed properly, but it's good in that it's there for people to enjoy, vicariously experience, and for people to feel that they want to contribute in their own way to the Weird Girl canon.
It's quite funny that you say that, you know, there must have been something in the water sort of 5 years ago, which is very true. I hadn't even considered that. But it also makes me think of how Otessa, she's been such a pioneer of this category, because, I mean, when did Eileen come out in like 2015 or 2016 or something like that.
Yeah, she's the pioneer.
Early days to be talking about a girl who picks her nose and like rubs it on a garment in a store. It's like, based on the fact that you receive a lot of arcs now and in your experience in the world of writing, do you have any views on where you kind of think the category is going to go next, or where you'd like it to go?
I feel like, as so often with these things, I feel like there'll probably be like some kind of backlash against it at some point. I think that's just like the natural order of things. But no, I hope, because I know there's been like a great dearth of representation in publishing books recently. Like after George Floyd, there was a kind of huge surge in uptake of publishing black authors, or authors of colour. But that's like basically gone back down to normal, I think possibly even worse than before. And so I would love to see, like, to me it's just like wishful thinking, like women of colour representations of the unhinged girly, more of that, more please, that would be great.
I'm quite curious to see what's going to happen given the current political climate globally. Sure. And I've been very heartened to see so many publishers speaking out about standing by their authors and standing by having, well, we know there's work to be done, but by not making worse representation. That's been quite encouraging. But I'm interested, the proof is always in the pudding, right? I'm interested to see over the next couple of years what kinds of books we see published, and how diverse are they? What's the representation like? That will be the true test of whether or not they meant what they said, I guess. I went to a really interesting talk at the Auckland Writers Festival last year, and I think it was called, the title was like Beef on Writing Female Rage, I think. I don't know if you saw the Netflix series Beef that came out last year by Ali Wong. It was so funny. It was like, did it come out last year? It might have come out a couple of years ago, but it was hilarious. Like a comedy short series, really big themes around like being an Asian American mother and like repressing her rage and what happens if she just lets it go. So obviously I liked it. Like I thought it was hilarious, and she's so funny anyway. And the panel featured a bunch of different Asian writers, including Celeste Ng. She was on that panel too. And it was so fascinating hearing how there are apparently so many Chinese books and myths about women haunting you after death, because the only time an Asian woman can be angry is once she's dead. And I was like, that's so interesting to me, fascinating. And of course I immediately went out and I bought these different books about these myths and legends. I'm like, I have to know. But that really interests me, right? It's like, how are women received across different cultures and in different countries? What are the repercussions, and what does that look like when you're actually able to say what you feel, and what happens, what might happen?
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I don't want to know more.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been such a pleasure, and I cannot wait to hear more about your next book that's coming out. And I'm so excited for you being able to write full-time, work on it full-time now. It's amazing. Dream come true.
It is. Thank you so much.